Hollywood's Queer History, an incomplete timeline. It can be difficult as a heterosexual cis person to understand the importance of LGBTQ+ representation in media, as you're used to constantly seeing your sexuality and gender reflected everywhere you look, in adverts, films, magazines, and more. Although representation in films and television has improved recently, there is still a lot of work to be done to heal the wounds from decades of queerphobia and negative stereotypes from the media industry. The earliest possible portrayal of homosexuality was in the 1894 short film, the Dickinson experimental sound film, where two men are shown dancing together, although this interpretation is disputed. Homosexuality was largely depicted through gender-based stereotypes from the late 19th century to the 1930s. The pansy and sissy trope became the main ways which male homosexual characters were portrayed on screen. The female homosexual equivalent of the pansy character was normally portrayed as an overly masculine character. Comedic gender role reversal and drag can be seen in some films during this period, most notably in Charlie Chaplin's 1915 film, A Woman. In the film, Chaplin dresses up as a woman and plays with the affection of various men. The first film to win the Academy Award for Best Picture was the 1927 film Wings, which featured what is considered one of the first gay kisses in a Hollywood film. The film cleverly disguises the loving relationship between the two male protagonists as friendship using subtext and inference. The United States Supreme Court established a national censorship board to create the Motion Picture Production Code, also known as the Hays Code. The code banned the depiction of any kind of sexual perversion or dividends, which homosexuality fell under at the time. Often, gay characters would be completely cut from stories. For example, the 1936 film These Three, directed by William Wyler, was based on a stage play called The Children's Hour, that had a storyline about two teachers being accused of being part of a lesbian affair. But the film changed this storyline to be about a heterosexual love triangle, and changed the name of the film because of the play's association with homosexuality. Throughout the 1950s and 60s, the Hays Code, although still present, was enforced less, allowing some films to be slightly more relaxed on the code's rules. During this time period, gay characters were shown with more overtly sexual innuendos, but having any non-heterosexual identity was mostly portrayed as a miserable way of life, with gay characters often killing themselves or others. In 1961, William Wyler remade a more true-to-the-stage play adaptation of The Children's Hour. After Shirley MacLaine's character admits her love for Hepburn, she hangs herself. The 1962 film Lawrence of Arabia was one of the first films with LGBTQ+ characters to be a box office success. The film depicted a character who was implied to be gay and in a relationship with two men. The 1968 film The Killing of Sister George became the first English-language film to have consenting homosexual characters as the focus of the film. Andy Warhol had a significant influence on independent queer cinema in the 60s, with experimental films including Vinyl, Kiss, Sleep, Camp, and Couch, which all featured openly LGBTQ+ characters, exploring, performing, and embodying their sexual and gender identity. After the 1969 Stonewall riots in New York City and the hard work of the gay liberation movement, Hollywood saw business potential with aiming films at the LGBTQ+ audience. In 1970, the film The Boys in the Band was Hollywood's first attempt at marketing a film to a gay audience. The film received criticism for reinforcing certain anti-gay stereotypes, showing a group of gay and bisexual men which were all sad and unsatisfied with their lives. Mirroring society's gradual acceptance of homosexuality, film continued to slowly portray gay characters. Films started to reference and depict the AIDS and HIV pandemic, and furthered the spread of the ignorance about the disease, especially the idea that all gay people have AIDS. The first independent film about the pandemic was Parting Glances, followed by a mainstream TV movie, An Early Frost. Both films reinforced the homophobia and ignorance around the pandemic. In the late 80s, the cultural and political negativity towards the LGBTQ+ community began to ease, and many LGBTQ+ celebrities and politicians had come out, opening up more conversations about LGBTQ+ rights and sexuality in general. As a result of the new queer cinema movement, mainstream Hollywood films began to treat homosexuality as a normal sexuality entitled to dignity and respect. Prejudice and bigotry on the big screen became treated similarly to racism, sexism, and anti-Semitism. A-list actors became more eager to play gay characters, and although most of the initial depictions of gay characters were campy, funny characters often in drag, the improvement was significant. Films such as The Birdcage and Mrs. Doubtfire, both starring Robin Williams, showed a new saga of drag on screen. In 2005, Ang Lee's Oscar-winning film Brokeback Mountain marked a new era in modern gay cinema. The film was one of the first major mainstream films to focus on a love story between two men where their sexuality was portrayed as complex and emotional. Following the film's success, many well-known celebrity actors have played LGBTQ+ lead roles in films. Although it is a positive that more mainstream Hollywood films are telling stories with queer lead roles, Hollywood seems to overlook LGBTQ+ actors and instead cast well-known straight actors to ensure a film's commercial success. In 2018, of the 110 films that the GLAAD organization counted from the major studios, 18% contained characters openly identifying as LGBTQ+. Although this is an improvement on previous years, the full LGBTQ+ spectrum is still not being fully represented, with no trans characters appearing in any of the 110 films, and only 3 of the 110 films featuring a bisexual character. Furthermore, none of the films which fall under the animation category featured any LGBTQ+ characters at all. I hope this video has helped you to understand the history of LGBTQ+ representation on the big screen, and encouraged you to support and promote queer cinema. If you want to learn more, I recommend the documentary The Celluloid Closet, which explores and explains LGBTQ+ representation in Hollywood in more detail.